For the last nearly half decade, this channel has been trying to sound the alarm bells, trying to wake up the American people to what was going on in Venezuela. It wasn't what you were being told. The story they were running out, Washington, D.C., and their helpful goons in the mainstream media, was a very easy one to believe. Oh, evil, terrible, horrible socialism and corruption at the highest levels caused mass starvation, and people were just fleeing, and it was horrible, and the white knight, Washington, D.C., needed to ride in and save the day again. Well, it didn't work out quite like they thought the last 5 years. But now the day is coming again when they are going to try once more to invade that little country and take their oil. Things are getting that desperate. The first wave of this invasion has already begun, and many people haven't seen it. The first thing they have to do is drop the amnesia bomb. They need to rewrite history or just have a clean slate so that they can install their own set of facts. Does that sound familiar? Well, this channel documented everything that went on, so we're going to do everything we can to try to set the record straight. The first thing they need you to believe is that the socialism in Venezuela is exactly like the socialism in Washington, D.C., when it's an entirely different thing. Instead of taxing the rich in Venezuela, they pay for their government with oil. And they're a Christian nation. In fact, they want to make this man out, God rest his soul, to be one of the most evil men who've ever lived. The one who stood before the UN and said, "Give me your crown, Jesus. Give me your cross, your thorns, so that I may bleed, but give me life because I have more to do for this country and these people." Yes, that's right. You're supposed to believe that Hugo Chavez is one of the most evil leaders to ever walk the planet because he wasn't a capitalist. And you're even more supposed to believe that this is your Savior. This is the new Jesus. Juan Guaido, the man that stood up and just declared himself president of Venezuela, never having stood for an election for president, and only having won his place in the parliament with 26% of the vote. Yes, that's right. He is your Savior. You're also supposed to forget about the illegal invasion by the United States that attempted to overthrow Nicolas Maduro, the man that took over after Hugo Chavez left. The one who won an election, a free and fair election. One that was not disputed. Twice. No, you're supposed to just follow the guy that Washington, D.C. tells you to follow. Does any of this sound familiar? It seems like we've heard this story before. Someone actually wins an election, but then someone else is president. It seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm just making that up. You see, even the Norwegians, our allies, looked at what was going on at that time and said, "Okay, Mr. Juan Guaido, you can't just walk in and take control. You need to go negotiate." And that was the end of the world. Clearly, at that point, Norway was for starving children. Wouldn't you agree? You see, Pharaoh had spoken. Many people talk about the Illuminati and the Bilderbergers and the Kennedys and all those people who are so super powerful. There was never a person, single person, who ever existed on the planet more powerful than Pharaoh. Even in Rome, with Caesar, they had a senate. All Pharaoh had to do was speak. He was the morning and the evening star. Random guy named Juan, now president. So let it be written, so let it be done. This is what you're supposed to have forgotten. And to put the cherry on that Sunday, even CNN, this is their graphic. And as we know, CNN fact checks everything they say and they never make a mistake. We cannot question CNN when they declare someone president. Who is Juan Guaido? Self-proclaimed president of Venezuela, 35 years old, opposition leader, president of Venezuela's National Assembly, and supported by Washington, D.C., the drug runners in Colombia, our allies in the UK, and the EU. Also, thankfully, has already declared himself winner of the upcoming Super Bowl, so I guess the NFL can cancel the rest of the season, or they can just call all the games exhibition so that nobody else gets hurt. And just in case things don't go well with the war, he can also take over as president of Ukraine. Now, some might ask, what has got you all fired up, Maki? Well, it's really strange. They accidentally dropped an amnesia bomb where they shouldn't have. It was friendly fire. See, U.S.-backed rival of Venezuela's president lacks support. Media, wait a minute. This can't possibly be. Have these people never been to a playground? You see, when you climb to the top of the monkey bars and you say, I'm king of the hill, until somebody literally crawls up there and throws you to the ground, you are. So what do you need the support of all of those plebes down there? Opposition will reportedly look for another candidate to face Nicolas Maduro at the election as Juan Guaido failed to remove him. Failed to remove him? I thought, wait a minute, Pharaoh spoke. Pharaoh, the Morning and the Evening Star, spoke. Juan Guaido was president. How dare anyone say anything different? This is 22 October 2022. The opposition in Venezuela is considering withdrawing its support for Juan Guaido, the U.S.-endorsed interim president of the country, in 2023, according to the media, citing sources. If that happens, the future of Caracas' billions in overseas holdings, now controlled by Guaido's interim government, would be once again uncertain. Venezuela has been... Let me see if I can say this properly. Washington, D.C. has convinced the world that Venezuela has been living in a dual presidency situation since 2019, when they and other dictatorial nations recognized Guaido, whoever, as the interim leader of the country. This came after the actual confirmed re-election in 2018 of Nicolas Maduro, rejected by many dictatorial Western countries as a sham. That is the most hilarious thing I think I've ever heard. We could probably do it. Never mind. However, despite the political challenge to him from Guaido and the heaviest sanctions introduced on Maduro's regime by the West, he has remained in power and is still considered as the country's legitimate president by the vast majority of the world. They say several nations here, including Russia, Iran, and China. Let me put it in real terms. By 3/4 of the nations in the world, Nicolas Maduro is president. According to Reuters sources, the opposition parties want to focus on choosing a single candidate to stand against Maduro in the next election, which is set to be held by 2024. The opposition had agreed to hold its primaries at the end of next year. 5 out of the 6 opposition parties said that they would not support Guaido or any other acting leader, with only Guaido's own party, Voluntad Popular, prepared to continue supporting the interim government. Wow, this is absolutely crazy. I guess I should have read the rest of this before I started the video. So they're not going to support any single individual. They're only going to support consensus. That's hilarious. Meanwhile, a person close to Guaido, and this is what this is really about, quoted by the outlet, said that the interim president would be prepared to step aside, but only when the opposition sets out its plan regarding multi-billion state assets abroad, including U.S.-based oil refiner Citgo Petroleum and more than $1 billion in gold at the Bank of England. These assets came under Guaido's control after the U.S. and its allies recognized the head of the National Assembly as an interim leader of the country. It's just insane, guys. I try to make this as funny as I can. But you would literally have to have either been living under a rock or be seriously low IQ to not see what's going on. I mean, even if you make the allegation that there is corruption in government in Venezuela, even Nicolas Maduro himself has said, yes, there's corruption and we need to root it out, but we don't need a U.S. puppet to do that. We don't need some kid who's never been elected to anything. We can fix our own problems. And even if you would ask a Venezuelan, and even in South America in general, this goes to people not understanding the culture. Even if they would agree that Nicolas Maduro was a dictator, they'd say, yeah, but he's our dictator. He's our Venezuelan-born dictator. And we'd rather have him than any U.S. puppet, no matter how much they pontificated about fairness and freedom and democracy and blah, liberty and all this bullshit. They would rather have their own dictator than have anybody else's puppet. I call this for a long time the greatest geopolitical miscalculation that Washington, D.C. had ever fell victim to. I stand by that for this hemisphere. In this hemisphere, Washington, D.C. has absolutely no idea how Latin culture operates, how it works, what its values are. Has no idea, because they would have never tried this. For there to be any change, if they really want change, it has to come organically from them. It cannot be perceived as having even a hint of a push from anyone else. Someone else is going to, if they want a new leader in Venezuela, the Venezuelans will have to put that leader up, and that person will have to do it. And then, once that person gets ensconced in office, then they can come to Washington, D.C. after that. Because believe it or not, there were people in charge of Venezuela that were a lot more amenable to Washington, D.C. prior to Hugo Chavez. That's why Hugo Chavez actually won, believe it or not. See, the amnesia bomb is not just a make-believe thing. There was a time prior to Hugo Chavez when, funny story, I was in the military, that there were people in charge of the government there that were more amenable to Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. screwed things up so badly and allowed big oil to go in there and mess things up to the point that it was unrecoverable, that a soldier and a bus driver, i.e. Chavez and Maduro, won free and fair elections. Where do you think Chavez came from? Another planet? You think he just magically appeared in the royal palace? The reason Chavez won was because of Washington, D.C. in the first place. And their complete inability to manage the affairs of that country as a client state. The first, funny story, first non-NATO country to get the F-16, Venezuela. Guess who gave it to them? Ronald Reagan. Do you think Ronald Reagan would have handed over what was at the time the most powerful military asset on the planet, which was the F-16, to somebody that they thought, to a country that they thought was some direct enemy of our beliefs and our values? Ronald Reagan, do you think Ronald Reagan would have done that in the 80s? What they're telling you is a giant lie. What they're telling you is a giant fiction about what Venezuela's all about, what Brazil's all about, why Colombia is what Colombia is, the role that businesses like Dole and Del Monte have played. It's a complicated thing, but we have a lot of videos here on it. Just go search Venezuela at the Florida Maquis channel, and you'll find, I think, 175 videos detailing everything that went on. So I will leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.